Entrepreneur of the Year 2022 is Jordan Brompton, MyEnergi.
Jordan Brompton, one of my idols, and she's ended up running a 9-figure energy company. The fact that she walks into any room breaking every single stereotype, she's one of the most impressive people I have ever met.
So in November 2016 we started MyEnergi, and it's been a bloody whirlwind ever since. We started in our shed to now like a 65,000 square foot factory. Indirectly we invented smart charging.
I mean this in the least offensive way possible. If I met you and you were like, yeah, I own an energy company, I would be like, oh!
I've grown up with nothing. From 13 years old I started working. My dad graphed. I grew up on a scrapyard. I did Zumba instructing. I've worked in bars. I danced in nightclubs.
God, you've lived 100 lives.
Especially with a name called Jordan, and they'd expect a man to walk into the room. So, I don't get invited to the golf course.
Why would a woman have a job? It'd be ridiculous. It drives me fucking insane.
I've nearly been bullied out of my own business. Every day is a challenge. Every day you've got imposter syndrome. Every day you don't think you deserve to be there. I think as women we just torture ourselves. I'm winging it like my terrible eyeliner.
So what is the big end goal? What is up, guys, and welcome back to the podcast. Today we have Jordan Brompton, who is just one of my idols, really. She is an incredible entrepreneur. I think the reason I'm so obsessed with her is the fact that she walks into any room breaking every single stereotype, and she's so unapologetic about it and she owns it, and she's just so impressive. Her story is absolutely unmatched in terms of tenacity, the background she's come from, getting obsessed with the whole world of energy and renewable energy and making people self-sufficient. And I mean, she's been a dancer, she's been a hairdresser, she's worked in bars, and she's ended up running a 9-figure energy company. And as always, if you do enjoy the episode, please make sure to rate and subscribe and follow the podcast on whatever platform you are listening or watching it on. That really helps us and enables us to get amazing guests. So thank you so much. And as always, have a wonderful day. Well, I'm very excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, I feel like it's such a long time coming. I've seen you a few times. We spoke on the phone a few years ago, didn't we?
Yeah, and you've got a Zappi.
Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. And I have been completely obsessed with you and what you've done and your whole kind of, I was about to say energy, which would have been such a great,
cliche, I love it.
Just a little bit of a name drop in there. But I think you're absolutely amazing, and I want to get straight into it. Firstly, I always ask guests for just a little bit of background on themselves and their career. So I'd just love to hear, like, right from the very beginning, I guess school type of time, what were you like and where did you think you were going?
So I was useless at school.
Brilliant.
I was like, I loved it for the social aspect. I've always been very social, but academic wise, I was just shocking. I was very like C, D. I'd get a B in the arts and like in PE and things like that, but I just wasn't academic. I tried super hard, but it just wasn't there. So I was just knew straight away that I wasn't going to go to university. For starters, that wasn't even an option. I grew up in Grimsby, which was very working class, and I just had no idea what I wanted to do in my life. I was told straight away after leaving school that I could be a hairdresser, or I could go into travel and tourism, or
yeah, such a breadth.
Yeah, so I was like, wow, that's like my options. My mum and dad, really working class, super hard working. Mum's done like Zumba instructing. She was a full-time mum. My dad worked in oil and gas and was a rigger on the rigs. I like left school, not a clue what I wanted to do, but I was wanted to be independent from my parents because they're super hard working. I understood the value of money and I didn't want to put any extra pressure on them because they already worked hard as it was and had my little sister. So I think from 13 years old, I started working. I was, whether it was a paper round or whether it was on the Sunday market down at the beach selling scooters, I was just grafting to have my own money because I always wanted to travel. But then I was also a home bird, which is totally weird. So I'd want to travel, but I'd want to come back and I'd want to get a bit of culture. But I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. As I said, I grew up singing and dancing. But then at about 16, I just lost all my confidence, stopped going on stage, stopped doing anything that was sort of like performing arts. And I think it was after I'd come down for an audition in London and the girls sort of locked me in the toilet and said, like, who's that geek from like up north or whatever. It was like a very cliquey London crowd, and I come down for a dance audition, and I went back home and I was like, I am never going to London ever again.
You piece of shit. Oh my God.
Yeah, so I was like, that's my career over. And because I was too young and like vulnerable and ginger and geeky and just, I don't know. So I thought, right, well, that's not a vibe. So I just got stuck into work. And yeah, left school, tried college, tried law. I did a year of law, which I found interesting, but I was like, I'm not academic. So it's starting to get hard and I just don't get it. And then what did I do after that? I just did what the teachers told me I could do, which was hairdressing or travel and tourism. So I picked hairdressing, went and worked in a salon for a bit, but I was allergic to every product that I got, like dermatitis up my arms and up my neck. And I was like, so this isn't for me either.
Sorry. That's also such a niche thing.
But I'm also very happy about it, because if I'd have like loved it, and I wouldn't be where I am now. But I've just always had an interest in business, even though I've had no one to really, I guess the closest person that I've had to look up to in business is my granddad. So I've grown up in a real male-dominated family, even though my mum's super feminine. Like my dad had like 13 brothers and sisters. They're all very like huge, minor Yorkshire men with big hands, big outside jobs. And he used to buy and sell cars, and just a total Del boy, really. And I've grew up on a scrapyard watching him up north, like hustle. And then my dad graphed, and my dad used to say to me, whatever you do, kid, it don't matter about being academic. You're a great communicator. You've got great common sense, and not a lot of people in this world have got common sense. And I've been like a social butterfly that's flitted into every job, tried everything. I followed my mum. I did Zumba instructing. I've worked in bars. I danced in nightclubs. So then I went full opposite.
God, you've lived 100 lives.
I have, actually.
Wow.
I travelled the world. And then I came home. Met the love of my life, and who I'm married to now. Been with him 13 years, and I went and I thought, what am I going to do? Need a little admin job. There was a little admin job at a local manufacturing business, and I thought that'll be interesting. I rocked up, and it's my now business partner Lee. It was his little bit set up that he had, and it was in like a shed, and it was him and 5 or 6 other staff hand soldering these little devices. And I thought, what is he doing with these little, like, I could get him some customers.
Yeah. What types of devices were they?
So there were like now what's called our SHREDDY product, which was a power diverter. So anyone that had solar panels could essentially keep all the power in the home by diverting it to a hot water tank. So I just fell in love with like the industry, and I'd been dabbling with my own little businesses before that. I had the Zumba thing. Then I went to work for Lee, and then we parted ways briefly because he had 2 other shareholders at the time that just didn't want to put the money back into the business or grow it. And I said to Lee, it's such a shame I didn't meet you at the beginning of this, because I'd have loved to have partnered with you, because I think there's true potential in this brand, like in your products and in your brain.
Yeah.
So if you ever want to do something in the future, like let me know. And we parted ways for a bit, and I went and set my own business up called Spitfire Distribution. It was a cycling distribution business where I was buying parts from France and selling them to the UK.
What types of parts?
Like, it's dead boring. Like chain rings and ceramic bearings and things like that, and then clothing for bikes. And it was because I had a French friend who ended up being my business partner, who used to cycle in France, and he got these few brands, and I said, I'll sell them to the UK, because I've just been doing that for Lee, for these little gizmos. I was like, how hard can it be? Let's set up our own business. But then I realised very quickly that I hated being a distributor, because I was getting squeezed from the French with the supplier, and I was getting squeezed from the customer. And I realised that it was going to have to be super high volume to like make any money. Whereas when I was with Lee and he was manufacturing these little devices, I'd learned that you could control your destiny, your margin, your costs. He just didn't have the best business partners at the time to take it to the level that it needed to be. And it also, the solar market crashed, which meant all the feed-in tariffs were took. So his poor business, he went through a right nightmare. He had to close all that up. And then in 2016, he come knocking on my door and was like, that business is all boxed off now, gone. Do you want to do something together? Only thing is, I don't have any brand rights, any manufacturing equipment. I'll have to redesign it.
So that's actually nothing, but I'm here.
Yeah, but I'm here. My brain's here. And your love for the actual industry and passion for what you wanted to do before is hopefully still there. And let's do something together. And I was like, yes. That was like my moment where I was like, finally, because the cycling ain't doing it for me.
Yeah.
No matter how hard I try, I had a pink bike, OFS, and I was
Obviously.
like biking around the country and trying to sell these freaking chain rings. And I was like, oh, just not a vibe. I've got to sell too many of them.
Yeah.
To make any money. So yeah, that the rest is history. I said, look, I'll join you. So we registered the business in June 2016. I said, but I'm not starting until I've like got my wedding out the way, because that was in September, my honeymoon, and then you've got me fresh, like I'm all yours. But let me just get this period of my life. Let me get Spitfire sorted.
Yeah.
So in November 2016, we started MyEnergi. And it's been a bloody whirlwind ever since. It was like when you've got that gut feel that something's going to work.
Yeah.
And because I'm passionate about it, I knew I could sell it, and I'd fell in love with the industry and the whole concept of being off-grid, like taking somebody without being a total hippie that's living in the woods, that's like connecting some old rusty solar panel together and building whatever and fires. I thought we should be able to be off-grid in the modern day.
Right.
Like use technology to be as off-grid and as energy efficient, and I just love that whole
concept. So for people who might not know anything about that, I'd love to know, because I don't think when you walk, this is one of my favorite things about you, I don't think when you walk in a room, so if someone was like, I'm going to guess 10 things that this person is obsessed with, I do not think in that top 10 they would be like little gizmos that connect people to being off-grid and therefore having alternative uses of energy.
Yeah.
And I want to know what you love about this, because I am obsessed with the fact that this is really what, I just think it's the fact that we always see online now, like all of the most glamorous businesses in terms of like what to start, what looks good, and all of this. And you're here running this enormous energy company, having just been like, loved the gizmos.
I did. I love tech, but you know what it boils down to? I'm actually a bit of an anarchist. Like, you are expecting it.
No, I wasn't expecting that.
I'm a total conspiracy theorist. I'm a total anarchist, and I like the idea of decentralized power in any capacity. Like, I don't like the power of money, of our energy, of our food, of our water supply, of whatever it is. I don't like it being in the hands of like a few people, of the 1%.
And so explain the concept of off-grid.
So off-grid basically means that if you're generating your own power, you don't have to pull as much power from the actual grid.
Right, the national grid.
The national grid. So you're basically taking yourself as off-grid as possible. So in the UK, it's quite complicated to go completely off-grid. You've got to stay grid connected. But I like this idea of being virtually off-grid. So you've got solar panels in your home, and what MyEnergi does is just help you consume and divert that energy wherever you want it, so that you're not sending it back to the grid. You're just essentially your own little
pocket of energy.
Yeah.
Which is obviously great for the environment too.
And great for the environment, supports the grid, like the grid love it, because that allows then more large renewables onto the grid. It gives us energy security as a country. So if all the people that can have solar panels on their roof, or a little turbine, or hydro if they live next to some water, if they can get themselves as off-grid as possible, we are actually energy secure as a country, which is in the current climate obviously very important. So I'm just like, I've just got a fascination with it, and I fell into the industry, and at the time there was no women in it. Like when I joined, I've worked in solar now for, I think it's coming up about 14 years or so, and there was no women in it at that time. It was very like, I had to traipse around Europe, traipse around the UK set with my little roll-up banners at trade shows and stuff. I had to know my stuff technically, because I'm dealing with electricians. I'm not dealing with like women, and it was hard graft at the beginning, but that's the time that I love as well, like that building the brand, that startup, that hustle, that not knowing if you're going to make next month's paycheck. If not,
keeps you going.
Yeah. You have to, aren't you? You've got no choice.
I know. I always think that entrepreneurs are like a special type of weird, in the way that we're like, this makes me feel alive. And it's like, you could just not.
A few times I was like, why can't I just get a job at Tesco and be happy about it, and then have my weekends, and why am I doing this to myself? Because it's freaking hell. But no, it's paid off, and the rewards have been amazing, and I mean, it's stressful, but
worth it. And so right at the beginning, what was your concept for, like, when you two sat down together, what was your concept for MyEnergi, for what you were starting and what you were building? So
we were starting with what we knew, which was the very first product that Lee had ever designed, which was our Ready product. So we was like, I am going to design it now, it's going to be like the 7th version of it, because I know it inside out. I'm going to do it amazing. and let's do it for the German market, because the German market's just about to take off. And I was like, yeah, I'm here for that. Like, I know how to sell it. I know the tech inside out. I've got customers that I can already go to. I've got, you know, loyal friendships in the industry that I can go straight to and say, me and Lee are partnering up, so give us your money. We had customers that were buying them in advance before we even had manufacturing equipment or whatever, like helping us bankroll, that are now business partners in other parts of the world. So I had a loyal few customers from relationships that I'd built before. So I was like, let's just get stuck in with the Eddy product. But it was when Lee was driving a little Nissan Leaf at the time, and I remember him saying, I've still got export, like I'm still exporting to the grid. So he's like, the Eddy is heated my water by midday, and then I've got all this power and I'm exporting it to the grid, and it's not going to my electric car. And I said, my God, mate, get cracking, get in that shed and don't come out until you figure something out.
Your car is running off the hot water somehow.
Literally, like, I want that. I want 3 miles from the sunshine, no fuel ever again. I'm not paying for fuel ever again. So get in that shed. And that's when Zappi was sort of born. Yeah. And Zappi just, like, oh my God, took us to next level, because it just turned out that all the electric vehicle drivers of that time, which weren't very many, but there was quite a few, most of them had solar panels. So and most of them were like dying for this product, which we didn't even know. It was just by accident that we saw a problem and solved it. And indirectly, we then, you know, invented smart charging as it's known today. We were the first sort of in the world to think about balancing the grid, balancing the home, even if you don't have solar panels. Like, if you've got an electric shower on, a kettle on, and all these different things, like just reducing the power to the car, because otherwise you're going to get your main fuse pretty hot. And like, the grid responded to it, customers responded to it, electricians loved it. So it just took off.
And what was Lee's background?
So Lee's an electronics engineer. He was self-taught originally, then he went to uni, and he's had like jobs at Ericsson and places like that. He's had he had a little company called Big Cat, where he was making electronics for cars, like little boy racer stuff. He's always been tinkering. He's like a tinkerer, and we're both Grimsby kids, and he's just worked his way up to being an absolute top dog that he is now.
Signing £30 million rounds.
Yeah, a casual little...
Just a little casual, you know, just a drop in the ocean, really. Yeah. So not a lot. Yeah. That is I mean, it is all absolutely incredible, and it is such an amazing story. And you talk about it in such like a matter of fact, like, yeah, obviously that was the next step. And then I'm like, yeah, obviously that was the next step. And then I'm like, wait, how did you even know the type of, like, how do you sell this type of stuff to people? I know obviously, like, I know obviously there's a kind of, you know, you absolutely can market it in the way that you'd market anything else, but it is quite and at the time, especially as you were talking about, like, people didn't have electric cars in the way they were now. And so just even thinking like where you would even start with like making something like that go mainstream, I think of, I mean, probably if I had to list all of the sectors that I was going to start a business in, starting an energy company, I don't think would be very high up the list, because I would literally be like, where do I even start? Where did you kind of get that, just, I guess, like matter of fact, like tenacity in terms of just getting on with things and just figuring it out?
Yeah, so I guess I looked at the market. One thing that's good when you are brought up in somewhere like Grimsby, not surrounded, I hardly ever came to the city. I had no external input, no analysts telling me to do this, no people checking the data, no one doing the market research. Because if they had, they would have told me not to do it.
Yeah, it's too hard.
So my first instinct was to get online. I was like trying not to give too much away, but build the brand and build some contacts online and through LinkedIn and things like that. But I guess I looked, and my first point of contact, I thought, it turned out that one of the market leaders in EV charging, because there was a few other like electric vehicle charge points that were around, but they were just what we call dumb chargers. So they were just putting full power to the car regardless. And these companies were making a mint, because the government was giving away £1,000 for every charger, even though they cost about £25 to build. We opened one up and we were like, the electronics in them are so minimal. They were like caravan hookup points.
Well, why are they none on my road then?
So the government was like throwing money at this point. It was called the OLEV scheme, and we didn't have a charger at this point. And I said, let's go to who's winning in this market space at the minute and say, like, we can make your tech smarter. Can we, like, can we put our Zappi in your product and do like a licensing thing? I tried everything at the beginning to get the brand off the ground, and I just got doors slammed in my face. I remember this one company actually saying to me, why should I help you? I don't care about the environment. I don't care about the grid. I just want to sell units. And he looked at me and he went, you could be a competitor one day. So what? And I was like, no, not one day. Like, I am going to be your competitor. Now you've just treated me like that. Like, you will see me again.
Yes. Goodbye.
It was honestly like,
that is
what a dick. So I left the office like, well, that's fine. That's his opinion, whatever. And then a year later, I saw him at one of our customers, because I'd gone to, I thought, right, I'm going to look at all your customers, mate, and I'm going to jump on the back of it with the product. So I went to all the electricians. I thought I'll start with the solar installers, because they're a target market. So I was like contacting every solar installer in the country that I could find online, telling them about our tech. And then I was like, okay, so how do I get in front of more electricians? Through the electrical wholesalers. So then I started knocking down the doors of the electrical wholesalers and saying, this EV market's going to happen and take off in a big way. Why don't you sell our products? And it didn't want as easy as that. I got a lot of no's, some people said yes, and it just started like snowballing. But I guess a real big catalyst and a big point was there was a YouTube channel, still is, called Fully Charged, and they've got like 1 million subscribers, and it's people all interested in electric vehicles and renewables and debunking all the myths that you'll see in like loads of propaganda at the minute about the industry. So you can go there for like actual studies and talks from professionals that are saying that, about cobalt and mining and where the energy is coming from and all that. You can get all the actual information. So I knew that they were going to be at an event up in Orkney. So I drove in Lee's Nissan Leaf, which only had 55 miles range, up to Orkney, which is a long way, by the way. And I had to stop 12 times to drive through the night. And
sit there as well. The thing is about an electric car is you forget that if you run out of battery,
it's hours.
It's not like filling your petrol. You just sit there like,
This journey took 12 hours. No, it didn't. It took longer than that. Took hours anyway, but it took 12 stops. Like I had to stop 12 times. I didn't even make it to the first charger. I ran out and I rolled in like downhill to the charger, and then I got there and obviously it didn't work, because this was like 7 years ago.
Right, of course.
Before the infrastructure is what it is now. And I met Robert Llewellyn, the guy who owns the YouTube channel, and I just said to him, look, I've got to show you our tech. And he just fell in love with it. And he said, I'm going to do you an episode. I'm going to do an episode on it. And normally don't do episodes on like tech and things like that.
On the product itself. Yeah.
But he was like, but this is so innovative and just so needed. And that, that day our website that I built broke, and the phone began to ring, and we manufacture all of our products as well, by the way. So we are
completely vertically integrated.
So we'd gone from, I was hand soldering them myself, like packaging them up, walking them to the post office. Then
with your Zappi.
Carrying my Zappi up the hill in the local village where we started in our shed, to now like I don't know, we're just building a 65,000 square foot factory with all the latest manufacturing equipment we can churn out millions of these things around the world.
Yeah, no more soldering for you. And so that obviously hugely started to take off. What kind of size was your team at that time?
I don't even remember. I think there must have been about, when it really took off, there was probably about 15, 16 or so people by that point.
Right, and how did that feel to suddenly be managing 15, 16 people? Were
hard.
They in office side, or were they doing the manufacturing side?
Yeah, it was office and manufacturing. It was all very hands-on.
Yeah.
We was like, orders were growing in momentum, and everybody was doing a bit of everything. And when you're starting up, you hire people, you'll hire anyone who's willing to help you.
Right.
You don't hiring on skill. You're hiring on help me.
Existence.
Like family and friends, and just begging people to work for you, and pulling in the family and the husband and stuff on Easter bank holidays and stuff to get orders out. It was wild. But I found the hardest part going from about that size to probably about 40, 50, because it had gone from feeling like everyone felt like there was family to then all of a sudden you trying to put processes and procedures in and bring people in that are qualified. And it starts, I remember going, and that was when I was pregnant. I remember going through a really hard time and a really hard transition of going from like friendly family startup fun vibes to all of a sudden this is getting a bit too successful and people turning and being a bit weird, and then somebody the politics.
Yeah.
It was hard work. But now I think once you've got over like the couple of hundred mark of people, it's a fully functioning business. It's less like personal, it's more
I definitely have found that transition between being like 4 people in a room to being like, I mean, we're only like 35 people, but even at that stage when it's like, you know, everything's pretty process driven, and it has to, I remember our CEO once saying, like, it was in one of our like all hands type things, and she said the other day, she was like, the fact that half of you probably think we're too corporate and half of you probably think we're too scrappy and messy probably means we're in the exact right place that like a startup that's scaling needs to be in. And I was like, that is so true, but also it genuinely does mean that usually half the people there think you're an absolute shit show that's got nothing in place, and like they're running around being like, I need more process, and half the people there are like, you've added too many layers and like it's too complicated. And you like, that's how I feel constantly at the moment. I feel like I'm finding this stage so hard in terms of people and team, and actually being able to like work out exactly the types of people we need, exactly like the types of processes we need, what's too much, what's too little, how do you incentivize like innovation within the team whilst also putting things in place to mean things that don't go wrong. It is just, I mean, I think I'm finding it the hardest I've ever found it in terms of people at the moment for exactly that reason.
It's normal, and it's the hardest stage. I think once you get through that growing pain,
except you said it's fine when you get to a few hundred, and I'm quite far away from that, and I'm having a tough time, Jordan.
I think good management is key. Like you need your core like A team, because that's what I've found. I call them my A team. And that's like, getting that right is a blessing. And I've, you know, it's like anything in relationships. You kiss a few frogs, you get it wrong a few times. I've had the imposter syndrome where I've let people come in and be really corporate, and I think, well, I trust everything they say because they're better than me, and then it's gone horribly wrong for the culture. And we've just done a culture session because I feel like we've got a culture war where it's old world versus new, and it's like, I'm wanting to run it really like liberal and relaxed and trusting, and then there's some that want no processes, procedures, it's black, it's white, there's no grey area, and I'm like
and also what I find tough is that it's so, management style is so specific to who you're managing and the types of people you're managing, but in a bigger organization you can't run things based on the person, because I've always managed people differently, whether it's like a, you know, I always think it's best when it's on like a trust relationship, and it's on the type of thing where you can really easily just be like, you're essentially, I like people to be able to act self-employed within an organization, because if they feel trusted, I'm not micromanaging, it's better for me, it's better for them, all of that. But then there are also, you can't hire fast enough, and therefore not everyone you hire is going to be like that, and not everyone thrives in that situation. So as much as you can say in the interview process, like, you know, how good are you at like this type of thing, or whatever it might be, and then also it's not always good to have all the same types of people too.
Exactly.
And so mix. I found it so hard to adapt my leadership and management style, both to manage people correctly, but also to be like, we've all got to have some sort of homogeneity in terms of like the way we do things. Otherwise it's just, it's hard. I mean, it's chaos.
It's chaos. It's hard work. And I don't think there's any like right or wrong way of doing it.
That's not what I wanted you to say. I wanted you to give me tips, and then all my problems will be gone.
We can offline. I'll see what the real problems are.
Yeah, so fair enough. And in terms of that, I guess going from, I mean, how many people are you now?
I don't actually know. It's I think it's about 400 at the moment. We've had a bit of a wobble this year, because the energy crisis and the cost of living. We were growing at like 200% year on year, and then we just hit this massive slowdown because of the cost of living crisis,
of course.
And because all the subsidies were cut for EVs, and it's all being politicized now, and we ramped our production.
I cannot believe such a segue. I cannot believe they've moved that EV target.
Total twats.
Like, it doesn't even make sense. It's one of those classic things. I've seen a few things coming out in the press at the moment that are so blatantly just them trying to get up on points. Yeah. Like, it's them suddenly being really transphobic. It's them suddenly moving the EV thing and all of this. None of them actually make sense. Nope. It's not like anyone, it's just getting like,
the thing is, all the car manufacturers now have switched their
That's
production.
The thing. You're not going to do what was it? 2025? No, 2035.
They've switched it to, it was 2030. Now it's 2030.
Right.
They've pushed it back to.
That being 7 years to turn whole businesses round in terms of not producing petrol and diesel vehicles. obviously everyone's already going to be on that road.
They have to. Like, it's a massive mammoth task to like switch your whole mechanical manufacturing to electronic. And it's not just like the whole world signed up to this, like the whole world's doing it. And now by us reversing it, we are just literally destroying this country and any economic advantage that we could have had. And we was doing so well. Like, we're leaps and bounds ahead of like the US even, in terms of like tech around the home and EVs and EV charging. And it's just, we could have really grabbed hold of it and been a leader as our little island, as off grid as possible. And it's just who cares anyway? We'll just keep doing it. I think like the cars have made the switch. We'll carry on. Consumers have made their minds up, most of them, even though the media is not helping so much at the minute with the fear mongering and the propaganda. But you know, I just think how can it be wrong? You know, literally, you know what it's like. You live in the city. Just not having the fuel like pumping out the back into the atmosphere. You know, and it's so energy intensive to produce fuel, like to drill it out the ground, to then turn it into something that we can use, to then burn it into the atmosphere. Yes, making a battery isn't completely emission free, but once it's with you, and there's it's not even more emissions after it, and you can recycle it after. It's
not even like we were super close to the deadline and then they were being like, we're going to add a 2-year grace period so that you can do X, Y, and Z. It's not even that. Like, it's literally just like a flat switch where you're so right, we could have been leaps and bounds ahead. And we as a country, we are getting political, but like, we as a country very much need some sort of angle where we can be like, actually, no,
we do.
You know, we're
leading in this.
We're leading in this, and actually that's because we've set targets, which mean that we have to lead in this. And now look where we are. This is amazing. Like, we, you know, are way ahead in this specific area. As you said, ahead of the US. That's amazing. Like, it's specifically that, like, with the cost of living crisis and with this many crises over the past few years, like, we've never had this intense amount of, whether it's like recessions, COVID, crises, over and over and over again.
What a time to start a business.
Yeah, I know, brilliant. I know what I should do. I need to make myself more insecure. But yeah, it's exactly that type of thing. And it's like, it just doesn't make any sense at all. You as a business, when you get that type of news that obviously you've planned to ramp up production, to account for the increase in demand, I can imagine that's a lot of your business plan over the next few years. How have you adapted to, like, when big news like that comes in? How do you even deal with that?
It was so hard. So the slowdown has been awful because it meant that we were too top heavy with, and you can't just turn off your suppliers. So if you've got like hundreds of thousands of components on order to manufacture your products based on a market growth rate that was happening last year and the year before and what everybody's predicted, and then all of a sudden it slows right down, you've got to recuperate those costs somehow. Up until that point, we were a self-funded business. We'd got some investment, 1.8 back in 2019. We raised 1.8 million from angel investors.
Right.
And we'd been growing off our own profits ever since. We've been completely profitable.
Which is unbelievable.
And then this took a massive dint in our cash flow. We had to let some staff go. It was honestly the worst, most brutal experience I've ever gone through as a business owner, because I'm stressed even when it's going good.
Right.
You know, like, I find it high pressured and stressful, and it's not like I'm living my best life. I'm always under pressure and stressed. But when it's like going the wrong direction all of a sudden, and you're having to like lay people off it was just savage. But we seem to be over the hump of that, and we have just closed out on a round which I mentioned to you. We've raised 30 million, which is nice,
which
to help
is
us grow.
Unbelievable. Incredible. Also, I like, for context, for anyone who's not in the fundraising sphere, this year has been absolutely savage in terms of fundraising. Or like, there's been almost no deal flow in like any direction at all. Like, no one's really been getting checks, and for you to just like work out you need money a bit ago and come into like essentially at this point and get it is amazing.
We also got super supportive bank. Like, we had some help from the bank as well, give us a revolving credit line of 30 million. So we've got that, you know, we're now well capitalized and ready to grow, because we're looking at other markets as well, and we've got a list as long as our arm of other products that we want to bring out. But all of that's like, you know, we've had a bit of a hold obviously on recruitment for a long time, and the team are all stretched, and so we're ready to just take that pressure off everybody and take a breath and go again, because it's been a really intense 7-8 months it's been.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And so I want to talk a little bit, I guess, linked to the funding conversation. I want to talk a little bit about being a female business owner, having raised funding as a woman. Obviously, we discussed you have a male co-founder, so the stats are slightly different. However, they're still not great.
Yeah.
How have you found the process of, I guess, we'll talk about raising funding first. Did you feel like there was anything you were up against in terms of like walking into a room as a very feminine woman being like, I run an energy company? I mean, I guess you have the numbers that speak for themselves now.
I didn't really like, we were gonna IPO before the war happened.
You're so impressive.
We was gonna IPO and we had everything in motion to go. And we'd been on the glory parade, we'd been around meeting investors, we'd got the pitch nailed, we were on this mad trajectory where we were growing 200% year on year. And if we'd have got that over the line, it'd have been great personally, but it would have fell off a cliff not long after, and share prices, and then who knows what would have happened. So I'm so glad we didn't IPO when we did, but we knew that we were going to need cash and not our own like organic growth. Even though organic growth has been impressive, it was like we need some extra help if we want to do all the things we're going to do, so let's switch to private equity. And then it's been they won't mind me saying it's been hell. It's been a really difficult journey, and I've learned so much through this process.
So the difference between, and we have what I mean, we've obviously done a much smaller round, but the difference between angel and raising institutional money is, and the difference for people who might not know, the angel is obviously high net worth individuals and they're operating on their own, and institutional is institution, so it'll be funds in some way, so whether it's like VC or private equity. It is a very different,
and they want the inside leg measurements, and they want to know what you're gonna, and like the term sheets and the due diligence that goes into it, and the due diligence and the amount of teams and the lawyers, and I'm like,
I just remember thinking
intense.
The last fundraise, I remember when going through the due diligence and stuff, I remember being like, if we get through this due diligence, I have nothing to worry about ever, because the amount of due diligence on every single side of the business that is done. I mean,
they leave no like
there is no stone unturned.
Yeah,
there is definitely no stone unturned, and it is just so extensive. Whilst you also are running the business, I think that's one of the biggest things about fundraising. I think
it hurts the business.
No, I completely agree, and that's why investors often have the upper hand, because obviously they know that you want to do like an internal round of some form, or like whatever it might be, because it is so hard to come away from the business, spend that time pitching, doing the due diligence and generally fundraising, whilst also attempting to run the business as you usually would in probably a position that's not that easy anyway. And then you also need to have a
life.
Yes. No. Why would you do that?
And raise a child.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah, that's small
everyone,
thing. Yeah. No, I like that's also like a whole other thing. And in terms of being a woman who kind of owns this company, and from the original, I guess you were originally starting to be a leader, how have you found that being a woman has impacted people's, I guess, perception of you as a leader?
Yeah, it blows people's minds, I think, especially because it's in this industry, like you say. Absolutely. It seems to like, it's a conversation starter, and it's interesting. It's like me and my husband have just been away, and we've been in Dubai, and people always say to me, "Oh, like, what do you do?" Like they ask it's natural to go to the man first.
Why would a woman have a job?
Yeah.
I mean, ridiculous.
And it's all, people lead with it, don't they? Like, what do you do? And blah, blah, blah. But being a woman, I don't know. Like, I actually just hate that we have to still talk in 2023 about being a woman in business.
We said, just also for context before we started recording, this is literally exactly what I said. I always feel so almost like horrible that every time I have like a really impressive woman here, I'm like, but being a woman. Yeah. And it's like,
but it is, you do get treated like, you do get treated differently. And I notice it in sales and things like that. You know, I don't get invited to the golf course. You know? Where's my invite? Because that would be weird and might cause problems like at home. You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just not the same when you're a female leader.
Still very much an old boys club.
Still a little bit of a boys club, yeah. But I've never felt any of the guys treat me with any disrespect, really, even in the banking world and when I've been raising cash and when I've got amazing investors, I've got amazing like males around. I've always had a lot of men around me. And I guess growing up by a very male-dominated family, I've learned my dad's always taught me how to handle myself. And I really recommend getting into bar work when you're young, because then you just meet every type of walk of life, don't you? And being a dancer, I've just learned how to like, I'm very street smart and learned how to read a room and read body language. And don't get me wrong, like people, especially with a name called Jordan as well, because back in the day, someone would email me and they'd be speaking to me and they'd expect a man to walk into the room. So when a blonde with a pink blazer
with a bright pink Audi walks in,
it's like it puts them on the back foot because they was expecting a bloke. Until, you know, now we've got pictures everywhere and people sort of know now. But in the early days when I was starting off, I used to see people physically like disarm when I walked into a room, like, oh, one expecting that, yeah. So there is like there's a bias and you get treated different and you might get judged, but I don't just find it from the blokes. I find it quite a lot from the women as well.
I think it is. I really think that is very true. And I always say, I think we all have underlying preconceptions and biases that I even find like in myself, you know, when you're talking to someone, you're like, oh, yeah, I mean this in the least offensive way possible. If I met you and you were like, yeah, I own an energy company, I would, like, as in, it's terrible that's even in it, but I would be like, oh, yeah, amazing. That's really amazing. But it's so in our heads. Yeah, we are so, especially like we've talked about the fact that you've deliberately lent into the fact that you're a very feminine, like a certain way. Exactly.
I've not toned it down. People have tried to make me tone it down. I can remember I've been through that. I've had one guy that I'd never say his name, but I'll say it to him. I appointed him. He was one of our first big hires, and I remember him saying to me, "I think you should change your profile picture because I don't think it's very appropriate. Is that like that what we want to portray?" And I was like, "How dare you? I've just literally
I'm so nice."
Yeah, and it was like, what
also,
was
you would
it?
never say. Would he ever say that to his male boss that he just
exactly like people do say things when you're a female or when you're a little bit more, because I am very open, there for everybody, super like warm, engaging, like welcome people in, and I do. People take chunks out of me, and people take chunks out of me because of my kind nature and that as well. And I find like I'm a bit of a punching bag, and I am probably the most judged of the C-suite, and I'm judged internally, I'm judged externally. But then when you get into the nuts and bolts of it, like I am also really respected. I'm just unconventional. I think people don't know what to do with it, and they're battling their own biases and social conditioning, and I don't know, but I get through, I get by it, I get my knockbacks, I get chunks taken out of me, I build myself up. I mean, you can ask my EA, she's the closest to me, Lindsay, she sees it on it, and my husband, they probably, family and that, they see me roaring behind the closed doors when I've had a day of it, but I always just like manage to pull it together, and I'm like an elephant, I don't forget. So if someone's like took a chunk out of me or made my energy feel not nice, I remember that, and I'll always sort of not get my own back because I'm not like malicious, but I won't let it go. I'll make sure that it's nipped in the bud, and I'll make sure that it's been made clear that you've made me feel like that, and then and I don't hold grudges, and then I move on.
And how have you built that, I guess, that like kind of thick skin whilst also remaining authentic to the fact that, like, because I always find this, find like I pride myself in being generally quite a nice person. Like I know that I have really high standards. I know that I expect a lot from people, but I also know that I will treat everyone with respect. I will be very nice to everyone, and I'm definitely not like a traditional, I guess, boss in lots of ways where I'll kind of like sweep in. I'll never shout at someone for fun. I'll never like, as in, I know that's like, you know, the bar is low, but like as in genuinely. But also then there's been so many times where I've considered myself like, or I've had conversations where I'm like, you would never say that to me if I was a man. Yeah, even if I was the same age. If you would never, ever, ever. And then I'm kind of like, I change myself for a bit. And then I always think, I don't want to change parts about myself purely because it doesn't make me taken as seriously, and it makes someone else comfortable, and it makes someone like, I don't want to turn into a horrible person just so you know that you can't talk to me like that, or whatever it might be. How have you managed to, I guess, build that muscle of like a thick skin and being able to take that type of behavior whilst also remaining authentic to the fact that you want to be yourself?
I don't think I'll ever have thick skin. I don't think I'll ever be used to it. I think I'll always struggle. And that's why I fear I fear doing stuff like this, because I think people come at you so easily these days, especially online. I don't understand
I'm
how,
ready.
Yeah, like they come for you, and I just think I do sort of hide. But I've had a moment where I was like, it was literally an epiphany recently. I was laid in the bath and I sent a TikTok video and it just summed it up, where I thought, oh my God, that is so true. Don't let anybody shrink you because they're uncomfortable with your energy and your way of like leading. And it was just such a pivotal moment that this film this little clip popped into my life, and I was like, do you know what? I'm not shrinking myself anymore. I'm always unapologetically me, but I'm going to be a little bit more unapologetically me, because I guess I have shrunk myself to suit society and to suit everybody internally and to suit everybody externally. And I know I'm not a crazy person. I know I don't run around, I'm not like you, not a bad person.
Yeah, and just because you're like that,
why do people feel that they can be this way with me, but they wouldn't dream of saying something like that to Lee?
Like, I've talked about this before, how the fact that we need women, in order to be liked, we need them not to be successful. But fine, if we can remove that, if we want to like a successful woman, we need them to be like violently humble and self-deprecating. Like, we really need them to be like, to basically qualify their success in a way where we're like, no, you wouldn't actually want it because these are all the like bad things about it.
God.
Like, we like to make other people comfortable with our success by saying it's not as good as it actually is. So and like, that's a big thing that we need. But then from leaders, and we also need women to be vulnerable. We need them to share all the shit things they've been through. Like, we require that of women to predicate their success, for their success to be like worthy. We need to have known they've gone through all of this. I always say that, like, I know the background to every single female founder within like every single female founder in the UK. If I know about them, I know their background. I know what type of education they've been through. I know all of this, because we need to be able to somehow be like, oh yeah, do you know what, they do deserve it? Yeah. Or whatever it might be. Or to be like, oh yeah, but they came from this background, or whatever it might be. True. Whereas every single man that is an entrepreneur, I don't know anything about their background. If I do, it's probably because they're so famous and so successful that we're like, yeah, cool. But we never concentrate on their background. We never concentrate on where they came from. Like, as in, we don't need to in the same way. But then, I'll stop my rant soon, maybe.
No, I love it.
Then, for leaders, we ask them to be the opposite. We ask them to be strong and not show their vulnerabilities in the same way. We ask for them to be able to like ring fence and put on like this persona and all of this. So then we're saying, well, to be a woman, you need to do all of these things. And to be a good leader, you need to do all of these things. And unfortunately, they're mutually exclusive. So unfortunately, we can't have any likable women leaders. Like, it drives me fucking insane. Because when you think about it, you're like, okay, but you're asking for the two completely different things. So I've got to go into a room and I've got to be vulnerable, but I've also got to be strong and show none of my weaknesses. But then I've got to be really humble, but then I've got to be sure of myself because I've got to show that I deserve to be here and all of this.
Don't be too defensive. And don't be too emotional. It's just business. And don't be too this and don't be too that. And
I don't have the bandwidth.
I know. It's freaking intense. It's mental torture at times, and it's just not what you need on top of running a business. You don't need to be going home and thinking, it's a good job with strong characters, because I could have quit a few times. I would say I've nearly been bullied out of my own business, in the sense that I've thought, this is just too much. I've not got this in me. Why am I feeling like this and no one else is feeling like it? Why am I? And women are quite good at graciously walking away as well, because I've also almost found myself at a point where I've been like, I'm going to be like gracious in this and just be like, do you know what, this isn't the place for me. And it's like, no, this is my place. What am I doing? That's the turmoil. And usually it's when I'm in the bath and I'm doing my self-care bloody Sundays, I'm like, no, I built this freaking thing. I'm staying, and I'm growing it, because if it's not me, it's someone else. And I've done the freaking legwork, and then I'm going to let someone in and swoop in. No, I'm not going to. So I'm like, pull yourself together, get a grip, stick your little iPads on, like, de-escalate the puffiness and go again. De-escalate the puffy, get the LED mask on like this, sat with everything, all my... I don't know, mate. Honestly, I don't know what the answers are. It's just, I think, because every size that the business gets, every day's a hurdle, every day's a challenge, every day you've got imposter syndrome, every day you don't think you deserve to be there, every day you're thinking, should I be this type of leader, should I be that type of leader? It gets easier with age. Like, I'm 34 now, I know you're only a baby. I think when you get into your 30s, get a whole new level. Something switches in your 30s where you care less and less and less what people think. And every year that goes by, it's starting to become more and more of a power. But I think, I don't know whether it's hormonally, I don't know whether because that plays a massive part in it. I don't know what I've started getting my bloods done regularly because I want to get on top of that and just get to know my body on a cellular level a little bit more, because I find stuff like that interesting. But I think, if I it does play a factor into it, because if I'm due on or something before a board meeting, I'm a freaking wreck, an absolute wreck. Board meetings, I get myself so worked up, but it's because I want to do such a good job and I want to be so equal to the blokes that are in the room that are calm and collected,
you have to
and I want to know my stuff. I don't want them to ask me a question and me not know. But then again, I'm having epiphanies all the time. Last board meeting, I thought, what does it matter if I don't know the answer?
And also, if they asked someone else and they didn't know the answer, I don't think they would doubt their entire capacity.
No, they wouldn't. But I do. It's just so, I think as women, we just torture ourselves and we're going through evolving times, aren't we? We're going through a totally different generation to what our parents went through, to what our grandparents went through. We're carving out this whole new technological world. We've got all this information online and everything. We've just got a lot to deal with in general, without throwing in multi-million pound businesses with 400 staff.
And that is all.
Amen.
That's what I have to say for today. Good night.
So I don't know the answers. You come into your podcast for some lovely inspiration. I don't know what to tell you.
I got nothing to give you.
I'm winging it like my terrible eyeliner.
I know. And I think that is the truth, to be honest, as well, because I think every single person is very much winging it, and there's little bits of advice you can take from everyone. But I think realistically, the true amazing entrepreneurs are the ones that are winging it to the extent that they... Obviously, entrepreneurs all the time, if you don't have the answer, you still do it. And I think that's the constant thing, is it's
There's nowhere to
I'll
hide.
sort it out later.
There's nowhere to hide. You can't bury your head in the sand for too long. When you are the owner of the business, it is you.
Yeah.
But I think one thing I would say about one thing that's helped me mentally, physically, and again, women feel so uncomfortable talking about the successes and they have to tone it down where everybody else can... go over the top and show about it. Yeah. Do you know what? I occasionally do. I've got the pink Audi. I think, I'm going to enjoy my car. I get comments thrown at me and stuff, but I think I've grown up with nothing. I didn't come from a wealthy family. I've not been handed nothing. I put up my own savings on the line. I'm not taking that away from anyone that has had it handed to them, because I think still you've got to graft. Even if you've been handed a wedge of cash, even if you've been handed a business, it's not a freaking given. But I can hold my head high that I did physically have nothing, and I've had no easy way of making it. So I think I am going to enjoy the finer things of life, and you're not going to take it away from me, and you're not going to make me feel like shit about it. And I also try and be a bit more, it's not like I'm showing off and being flashy, extra flashy, and showing things that I buy, but I will go on holiday. Yeah. And I'll have
but the one thing about me is
I will have a luxury holiday, and I will have a nice car. Soz, shoot me.
Yeah.
I'll buy a nice house. But one thing that gave me my physical sanity back, and I can't stress it enough to a female founder or to founders, is take some money off the table whenever you can. So I am when COVID hit, I was living in a little house. I just had my daughter. The pressure was building because we had a full manufacturing facility with orders that we couldn't keep up with, and then COVID hit, and I didn't know if we was going to have to mothball the business, lay people off. None of us knew what was going to happen. And I thought, I've put my whole life saving into this. Any money that I had, and when I say life saving, I mean I took 20 grand that I had in a house out, or borrowed a loan against it and put it in. That's all I had. And I was like, this cannot fail and be left with nothing, me and my husband and my little, I can't. I was literally terrified. So I went to my original investors and I said, I know the business is worth something now. I just want to sell a bit of my shareholding. I've seen a house that I want. It's just going to give me the comfort that I need through lockdown with my new baby.
That you're not pushing every day.
It's my dream house. I'll be
I'll be really good.
Yeah, I'll be good. Just give me the money. And it was a bit of a. They had me really, because it was at COVID. They were like, well, the pandemic's hit and we don't know where the business, and there's a risk. And luckily, I always think if you do feel like you're getting a bad deal, negotiate a clawback, so that if the business is worth more money, you can have some of your shares back, or you can have some cash back. So I negotiated that in as well. Amazing. Which ended up being worth a lot of money and was freaking godsend. So I negotiated and I took some money off the table, and I bought my dream house in the area where I've grown up, where it was always totally aspirational to live. And it just changed mine and my immediate family, my husband and my daughter's life. It set Bonnie up. And I thought, do you know what now? Anything that happens now really doesn't matter, because I've done more than what I ever dreamed I could do. And now I feel like the rest of it's fun, and I've still got my shareholding. I've still got some shareholding, and that I think if I'd have gone through what I've gone through in the last year, skint, still with no money off the table, because I think people think that if you've got a successful business that's turning over, like the business turns over 70 million, I don't take anything out of it other than a wage. I'm not taking dividends. I don't take profits out of it. It's all getting ploughed back in. And I think people have this perception that, oh wow, they're turning over 70 million, she must be loaded. It's like, no, I had to sell some shares to live the lifestyle that I'm living now. But if I hadn't have done that, I think I'd have quit. I think I'd have had a mental breakdown. I think I'd have ended up a nervous wreck. Yes. I don't think I could have gone through what I've gone through if I didn't take away my financial worry that I had at the time. And it's not even possible for some people, but if you get a slight opportunity, you've got a shareholding, you've got a business that's worth some value, just look into it.
Yeah.
I call it sleep money.
Yeah. No, and it is exactly that. And I love what you talked about in terms of being able to claw some of that money back as well, and being able to put growth shares in there and all of those various different things, because that is obviously incredibly important. But it is one of those things, like I do think there's a huge misconception that people who are, because your business has obviously just been valued because you've obviously had the 30 million put in. I've known founders who have obviously had like insane net worths and genuinely never taken a penny out, more because they haven't been able to. It's also a big misconception that you can just take out money when you obviously, if you're like insanely profitable, you could probably take out more, but actually usually it's an equity situation. It's usually, therefore it only happens at an equity event, aka then like a round. But even like if I only owned TALA, I don't take a penny. I take a salary. That is a lie. I take a salary from TALA, but if I only had TALA, which is undoubtedly out of what I do the most impressive and worth the most money, like it's worth a ridiculous, like if you look at it, it's worth a ridiculous amount of money. But if I only had that, the money I earn is entirely through other ventures, like because you cannot grow a business whilst also doing that, like it's not a way you can grow feasibly. No. And you can't just like take money out in that way. And I find it such a common misconception.
Agreed.
When people will see a recent valuation or they'll see something like that, and don't get me wrong, people who've obviously had like a huge exit like laughing, but it's one of those things where it's like the majority of founders go through this years and years and years of stress and actually not money motivated, because actually I found one of the most disheartening things is when you're having a really, really, really stressful year, for example, or a really hard 6 months, and you're pushing and you're pushing and you're pushing. The biggest difference about entrepreneurship is you genuinely actually see no difference in the money. Like you're not taking home anymore to be pushing that much more. No. You genuinely...
You're just working harder for less.
And you don't know if that's ever going to exist as well. It's all just an imaginary number until it does exist. Yeah. And even businesses that are worth tens of millions, hundreds of millions, sometimes never sell.
Yeah, and I've just seen things turn so fast. You just never ever know. You can be like on the up and think this is it for life now. This is fine. Right. I'll just ride this wave. Yeah, you don't know what's around the corner. Like there's so many macro factors that just. I mean, it might be different in your sort of business because you've got such a huge name yourself and following. I think you'll always be successful with your brands.
I think you'll always be successful. I think that's for sure.
I don't know, because you've got your, you've got your name, you've got your social. You could. I feel like you could spin up a million businesses if you want. You're so early in your career. I'm like, it's amazing to see. But I just think if you've got that one thing, and and it's sort of like a trend or it's an industry that's politicized, or especially if it's politicized, it's risky. It can be risky.
Yeah, no, I can completely imagine. I just want to talk briefly about, again, this is one of the things I hate talking to women about. I want to talk to you about having a baby.
So me and my husband are just so like, we were so content and so happy with our lives that it was like, we just made the decision that we were going to try. Even though I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but we'll figure it out. And it's that naivety, I think, at the beginning. But it was, we were happy either way. For starters, we've been together for ages and never actually had a scare or anything. So it was like, we didn't know if we could or not. Right. But we'd never actively tried. And we just said, if we fall, then it's meant to be. But if not, our life's ace. We're so happy regardless. So, if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. So we didn't put any pressure on it. Turns out I fell pretty quick. like straight away. So I was like, oh, okay, we're doing this then. Shit myself. And then the business was really like every single year, the business it moves at such a rate of knots. I think like 3 months in MyEnergi terms is like a year. That's how quick things happen. It's like dog years. And it was so freaking busy at this time. And I just released this little book that I did about for children, teaching them about renewable energy and all renewable planet. So I think getting it into the kids' psyche younger and younger and not terrifying them to death is important. So I just finished this book and I was about to go down and do the launch of it in Fully Charged. And I was loading the van and I was 32 weeks pregnant at the time. And I said to my friend Darcy, I said, I think the baby hasn't moved much today, and it moves quite a lot. And she went, no, it's fine. It's just because you're getting bigger and it's just got less room to move. And I had little cut-off shorts on. I was at that cute pregnancy stage. I was like, I rang my husband. I said, I don't think I've felt the baby move today. And I burst into tears. And Mike said, let's just go get you, let's go get you checked. Well, 2 hours later, I'm in emergency C-section and she's here. So I was like, wow. So she was 8 weeks early and I was not prepared, didn't have everything sorted. I was doing a deal at the time. So I was then doing a deal from intensive care because we both needed transfusions and it was fucking heavy. So my start was just utter madness. It was one of them flippant decisions that if we fall, we fall. If we don't, we don't. And I did. And then it was chaos. But now she's totally fine. She's here. Good. And one of the best things that I have done as well from taking some money off the table is retired my husband. So Mikey no longer works. So that has taken all the guilt and pressure off me because I tried to manage it all and I thought I was going to have a breakdown. Yeah. Because he had a job and it was like he'd get up at 7 a.m. He won't be back till midnight. He was an overhead linesman and it was like that job ruled over mine. Because there was no leeway, there was no flexibility. Course, yeah, it's a shift. So I'd be driving across town, like with the baby. I was like breastfeeding stuff at the time, pumping, trying to run the business, get to meetings, do board meetings, break my back trying to get back for the little while. I said, I don't know how women do it. I don't think I can do it. It was something's got to give. And I said, we've made a bit of money. Like, why do you have to work? And it was just like, it's going to make me feel so less guilty. It's going to put less pressure on my family. And again, I feel like I have to always caveat this with it's such a privilege and not everybody can do that and they can't. And I appreciate that. And I'm so lucky, but that is because I took the initiative at the time, grew the business, took the initiative to take some money off the table and make my life. I just try and make my life as stress-free as I can outside of the things that are, anything that I can control, try and take the stress away. Anything that I can't control, then I'm at least able to handle it that little bit better. So my husband's a full-time dad. He's a freaking amazing dad. And they come, and I also have decided not to put her in school. So she's not in school. She's homeschooled. She's got a tutor. She's just turned 4 and she's got a tutor 2 days a week. So she's got one-on-one time with the tutor doing all of her primary school work. And then they can literally, because we've got offices all around the world. I'm down in London a lot more. They can come with me. Amazing. So it's just like I've just made life work. And how has your mindset changed since having a baby? Obviously still running like a multi-million-pound company. Everything's now, it does change, like your whole perspective on life and everything just changes. It just naturally does. Something cellular in you changes to the point where you're doing everything for them. Now you're literally thinking about their future, thinking about how to think about making it as comfortable as possible, try and give her the best experience at every age she's at, and you just see the world through their eyes and want to leave a bit of a legacy for her, want to leave her options, want to leave her a planet. That would be nice. Right. That'd be good. If the planet was in, I want to leave her a nice country. I care about our country, I care about our planet, I care about big things, and that's a bloody weight of its own. I try and fix it all, but it just drives you more than ever. You just become really like tunnel visioned and less. When you can be selfish when you don't have a kid. You can just I'm my own baby. All the things you were saying about your child there, I was thinking that's what I do for myself. But that's good. You good. Do that. Try and make her have a stress-free existence. No, but it's so true. And I always think about that in terms of like, this is why, wanting to talk to you about like that kind of decision and all of that, because it fucking scares the shit out of me. Because I think as a founder, you have to be able to operate from a
almost entirely selfish mindset. Not in terms of like founders are selfish people, but like you work in a quite maniacal way. Like I definitely do. And I can do that because I have an incredibly supportive partner and I don't have any dependents.
Yeah.
And like worst comes to worst, I can get some doggy daycare.
But you're like boss. You'll make it work. You'll blow your own mind. You'll make it work. And it's not as scary as you think. It just adds a whole element of magic to your life that you didn't even realize you was ready for.
Yeah.
And it adds a level of maturity that just something goes in your brain that's just. But society is bonkers because you find you find a nice partner. It's when you're getting married. You get married. When you're having a kid, you have a kid. Then it's when you're having a second. You've got to give them a sibling. It's like,
what do you want from it? You give them a fucking sibling.
Can I just have a freaking break, if I'm honest? Now I'm going through the pressure of I'm like 35 in April. And I'm like, God's sake, if I am going to have another one, I'm going to have it soon. But then I'm like, but I've got so much on and I don't even know
I've
if I
just
want
signed
to.
a £30 million round.
Yeah, I can't.
I've got to spend £30 million and make it into 90 million.
Clock's going like this. And I'm like, no, then I'm like, well, but society puts a pressure on it. To you can't just have an only child and I'm thinking, but of course you can. That's all.
Yeah, of course you can.
Ridiculous.
And you can also freeze your eggs. She doesn't want to freeze her eggs.
I'm scared.
Camera reads will not freeze eggs.
I've seen the extraction process.
Oh yeah, that's what the hormones and then the
total wimp.
Yeah. Oh no, same.
Kourtney Kardashian go through that and it gets never.
Kourtney, my best mate.
My mate taught.
I've learned a lot from her going through that, and I would not like it. Yeah, no, I agree. I completely agree. So, what is the big end goal?
Well, I didn't think I'd have achieved as much as I've achieved, if I'm honest. I think I'd love, there's a part of me that's itching to try and crack America. So I think if we could take MyEnergi over to America, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
And it's a nice big goal. So I don't know, I just want to decarbonise as many homes as physically possible. My next immediate goal is I want 1 million connected customers in the UK because that would mean we've got 7 gigawatts of flexible power. And Drax is our biggest power station at 4 gigawatts. So I think that would be pretty cool. So it's like a nice little target to have.
So that would mean that you had more power than the national evil grid.
No. No. All the power. No.
Yeah, perfect.
That just so that we can do it and balance the grid. And I always said that we'd throw a Drax party, and that's sort of like a mini goal. There's more products that we want to release. There's new markets that I want to enter. Spain, France, Italy.
Well, what a good place to end. Thank you so much for coming on. You are absolutely incredible. I think you're just amazing. I can't say anything more than that. I clearly just lost for words. I'm so impressed.
I think you're the best as well. So I can't wait to just watch your life and career just keep going. I think you're amazing.
Thank you.